Hi everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel, and in today's tutorial I'm going to show you how to make this ribbed tank top. This is what it looks like, and I'll also insert a picture of what it looks like on the body. So for size S, I used about 120 to 130 grams of yarn, and for this size, this is size M, I used about 180 grams of yarn. I actually already have a short tutorial on TikTok for this top, but since not everyone has access to TikTok, I thought I'd make a new tutorial that's more detailed. I designed this top with the intention of making a crochet top that doesn't stretch out over time or lose its shape. So this makes it really easy to put on and take off without worrying about stretching out the top, because you can stretch this as much as you want and it'll still go back to its original shape. In today's tutorial, I'm going to be using number 3 weight or DK weight yarn. This is the yarn I'll be using today. I'll also be using a 4mm hook, some scissors, a tape measure, and some stitch markers. Okay, so to start, we're going to make a slip knot. And then we're going to chain the length that we want our top to be. So once you've made your chain, you just want to sort of hold it up against your body to make sure that that's the right length you want. Since I'm making this for a custom order, they requested the length of their top to be about 28 centimeters. So my chain measures about 28 centimeters. Because we're gonna be working with slip stitches, I'm going to add an extra amount of chains, because when we work with slip stitches, it tends to shrink the length of our project. So I think I'm going to add about 2 to 3 centimeters extra worth of stitches. Now we're going to block off the ribbing parts. So I want this end to be the bottom of my top, and I'm gonna block off about 4 centimeters worth of chains about here. Just gonna mark it with a stitch marker. So this is the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th chain from the end here from our slip knot. And then I'm also going to block off about 2.5 centimeters. So again, taking our stitch marker, and I'm gonna block off the 5th chain from the hook, like so. So now that we have blocked off our ribbing parts, we can start crocheting. So first we're going to skip that first chain and put a slip stitch into the next, like so. And just to make it a little easier for me, on the next round, I'm going to place a stitch marker in that very first slip stitch we made. Now I'm going to do slip stitches all the way until this purple stitch marker. Okay, now I'm just going to take out this purple stitch marker and put a slip stitch in that stitch. And then put back the stitch marker into the stitch we just made, like so. Now I'm going to single crochet all the way down the chain until we reach this yellow stitch marker. Okay, so I've reached my stitch marker. Now I'm going to take it out and place a slip stitch in the remaining stitches. But remember to put back your stitch marker in that first slip stitch. This is so that we know when to switch from slip stitch to single crochet in each round. So from here, continue making slip stitches Once you've reached the end of the row, chain 1, turn your work, and make slip stitches in the back loop only all the way up until this yellow stitch marker. So skip that first chain and pick up the back loop of the stitch and make a slip stitch, like so. I am also going to mark this very first stitch here so that it makes it easier for us to know when to stop, and this also prevents us from skipping or adding any stitches. So we continue by adding slip stitches, picking up only the back loop. Make sure you are keeping your tension extra loose when you're making your slip stitches, because slip stitches tend to be quite tight, and this makes the project shrink and also makes it harder for you to go into the stitches in the next round. So one tip I can give you to keep very loose stitches is when you're going in to pick up the loop, don't hold your working yarn so tightly, hold it quite loosely so that this loop on your hook is quite big and loose. So when we go into the stitch, picking up the back loop, and what I like to do is when I'm completing my slip stitch, I will sort of angle my hook upwards like this, still using my thumb here to hold the project, but angling my hook upwards this way to create a bigger loop for the stitch. Show you one more time. Picking up the back loop, and when we're completing our slip stitch, you want to angle your hook upwards like this so that it elongates this first loop here and makes the slip stitch looser. So now we've come up to our yellow stitch marker. I'm going to take it off and put one more slip stitch. Then put that stitch marker back in so we know for the next round when to start making slip stitches. For row 2, we're going to make slip stitches all the way down in every single stitch until the very end. I'm going to continue making slip stitches in the back loop only all the way down. Remember to put back your stitch markers. Okay, once we've made it to the end of our row, chain 1, turn your work, and make slip stitch in the back loop only until this purple stitch marker. That's the chain we just made, going in here, picking up only the back loop, putting in our first slip stitch. Again, I like to add a stitch marker here so that we're not skipping or adding any extra stitches. Continue making slip stitches. And remembering to put your stitch marker back in the same place. Okay, after we've made our slip stitches here in the beginning, we're now going to make single crochet in the back loop only all the way down until we reach our yellow stitch marker. Again, picking up only the back loop and making a single crochet. For your single crochets, you don't need to worry about your tension. You don't need to have loose tension for your single crochets. but I do recommend you have very loose tension for your slip stitches. And then once you reach your yellow stitch marker, take that out and put slip stitches in the back loop only, all the way to the end. That's my last stitch. Once you're at the end of the row, chain 1, turn your work, and make slip stitches in the back loop only until you reach this stitch marker. Again, I'm just marking this first stitch here so that we don't skip or add any extra stitches. Okay, once you made it to your stitch marker, put in our last slip stitch and don't forget to mark it. Now for this row, we're going to do slip stitch in the back loop only all the way down until the very end. I've made it to the end of my row. We're going to chain 1, turn our work, make slip stitch in the back loop only up until this purple stitch marker. Now, up until the yellow stitch marker we have here, I'm gonna do single crochet in the back loop only. Once you've reached your stitch marker, we're going to make slip stitches in the back loop only all the way to the end of the row. So I hope you get the pattern. We're basically alternating between a whole row of slip stitch in the back loop only and slip stitch in these ribbing parts that we've blocked off with our stitch markers, and then single crochet in the back loop only in the middle. So from here, from this row, you're going to chain 1, turn your work, and make slip stitch in every single stitch in the back loop, and then you're going to chain 1, you're going to slip stitch until here, and then you're going to single crochet in the back loop only all the way down until here, and then switch to slip stitches in the back loop only again. So I hope that pattern makes sense to you. We're just going to continue alternating between those two rows. Don't worry if the edges are slightly curving a little bit, or that your project isn't exactly straight, like mine is a little bit slanted this way. We just have to trust the process because it's kind of hard to visualize now, but when we do sew up the top, the edges will still be straight anyway, like so. Something like that. Obviously, I have to make more rows, but I think you get the point. As long as you're not skipping or adding any stitches, you should be fine. With that being said, just make sure you're keeping in your stitch markers and keeping track of your stitches. So I've crocheted enough rows for it to go all the way around my body. Make sure you're always trying on your top because we want this to fit more tightly. You're gonna want to stretch it as well while you're trying the top on. But once you've made enough rows to fit all the way around your body, we're going to join this panel up together and seam it up using slip stitches. So before we do that, we're going to determine which side we like better. So there's this side where it kind of looks like this, and the other side has a slightly different look. So whichever side you like best is going to be your right side. So for me, I like this side better. So this is going to be my right side. We're going to make sure that the wrong side is facing towards us. So I'm going to fold it like this, and this is my wrong side. So when I'm seaming up the panel, I'm going to seam it up on the wrong side. My last row was a single crochet in the back loop only row. You can end on either row, it doesn't matter. I've chained one already, and now I'm going to pick up the back loop of this first stitch, skipping that chain. So pick up the back loop, and then take the other side. Here we did the beginning chain, so I'm going to go through that first chain here, like so, and then we're going to slip stitch. So pull through all the loops on your hook, and you've made your first slip stitch. We're going to keep doing this all the way down, picking up only the back loops from this side and going through the chain on the other side. Here's my next stitch. I'm going to pick up just the back loop. Then on the other side, I'm going to go through the second chain. Like so. And make a slip stitch. So I'm going to show you again, picking up just the back loop and going through the chain on the opposite side. Then slip stitch. So this is what it should look like so far on the wrong side, and if I just flip this over, this is what the seam looks like on the right side. I'm at my last stitch. I'm gonna pick up that last back loop and go through that last chain, make a slip stitch, and then chain one. So this is what your top should look like right now. This is the wrong side, and if we flip it over, this is what the right side seam should look like. Once you've chained one, you can cut off your yarn, and we're going to pull to tighten, turning it inside out. This is what our seam looks like. I've put on my top so we can mark where our straps go. Just a reminder, when you're trying it on, make sure that the seam we just did is on the side of the body like this, so we won't see it from the back or from the front. This will also help us make sure that our straps are spread out evenly. Also, when you're trying it on, make sure that the smaller ribbing, so the ribbing where we did 4 slip stitches in the back loop only, is the one at the top here, and the smaller ribbing where we did 7 slip stitches will be on the bottom part of the top. I've marked my 2 straps here with stitch markers. Now we're going to take it off and make the straps. Okay, so once we have marked the front straps, we're going to count the number of rows in between the stitch marker and the seam so we can mark the back side of the strap. So I'm just going to count the raised rows here to make it a bit easier. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Then that's the seam. And then I'm going to count the same number on this side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And now I know I have to put a stitch marker in this row. It's helpful to use the same color stitch markers so you don't get confused. Okay, so now we know that these two stitch markers make one strap. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. I'm going to start counting 8 rows from this stitch marker. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Then we'll treat this row as the seam and count another 8 to the other side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So now I put my stitch marker in this next row. So now we know that these two stitch markers make our straps. You can try this on again to make sure that the placements of your straps are where you want them to be. Now we're going to add the straps. So I'm going to start here. You're going to take off your stitch marker, but also remember where it was because you need to insert the hook there. So I'm just going to insert my hook right here, and we're going to join our yarn. So take the yarn, pull it through, and I like to make a knot so that it's secure. Then I'm going to insert my hook back into that same space, and now we're going to chain our straps. So pull up a loop and chain 1 to get started. So that's your first chain. This is the chain I've made, and I'm just trying it on again. So when you're trying on the straps, put it over your shoulder like that, and make sure you're stretching it, pulling on it, because over time these straps will start to stretch out. Then you can adjust how your top is sitting on the body, make sure you like how it fits. And I think I'm going to make my chain a little shorter by about 4 chains, and then we can continue making our straps. Before I continue, I'm going to count the number of chains and note it down because we're going to need to make the same number of chains on the other side. Okay, so now we're going to connect to the other side, but before we do that, make sure that your chain is not twisted. Then we're gonna go to the back side of the top, insert my hook into this area where I put my stitch marker. I'm just gonna go right here. And then we're just going to slip stitch. So pulling the yarn through all loops on our hook. And now I'm going to slip stitch again into this area. Just right here. Slip stitch. Now I'm going to turn my work, and we're going to skip those first 2 stitches because it is the slip stitch. So going into this 3rd stitch here, I'm gonna make a single crochet. Like so. Single crochet, and now I'm just gonna continue working single crochets all the way down the chain. Okay, so I've made my single crochets and I have 1 more chain to go through. So I'm just gonna finish it like so. Now I'm just going to slip stitch into the middle here in between these 2 raised rows. Just gonna go about somewhere around here and slip stitch just like so. And then I'm just going to tighten that slip stitch by pulling on the loop. And then we're going to chain 1, and you can cut off your yarn. Before cutting off your yarn, I recommend trying this on again just to make sure that you're happy with how it fits. So now you're just going to repeat that to the other set of stitch markers. I have added my sleeves and we're basically done. The only thing we have left to do is to weave in all of our ends. So yeah, that's the end of the tutorial. I really hope you found it helpful and you enjoyed it. Please let me know if you have any questions. Leave it in the comments, or you can DM me, email me, reach out to me with your questions, and I'll do my best to help you.